So we are looking at example number 3 in your pre-calculus textbook. This is pre-calculus part 2. This is example number 3. It's found on like page 146 of your textbook. And what it's showing you in this particular one, in lesson 8.4 here, is how to find the multiplicative inverse. Just like every variable has its inverse, or every number has its inverse, a matrix also has its inverse. And so if we want to create 1 as a matrix, 1 doesn't look the same in a matrix as it does for others. But you can see, and I left it in here, this was right above example number 3 here. This right here becomes very important because it is kind of the formula that you use. Now there is a long way to do it, and I think example 2 shows you how to do the long way if you want to do it that way. But then it comes along with example 3 and shows you how to do it in a much shorter way. And that is, first of all, if you've got a 2 by 2 matrix with they're calling it A, B, C, and D here, then if you want to find the inverse, which is denoted by this right here, then what you've got to do is it's 1 over AD minus BC, which is these two minus these two. It's 1 over AD minus BC times, and then notice kind of the pattern here. The A and the D switch places in the new matrix, and the B and the C don't switch places, but they do become negatives or opposites of what they were. Now, if you can just memorize this, which I know at first seems real complicated, but actually it's much, much easier than having to do it the long way, then you will find out that this is not too bad of a way to go. Now, if AD and minus BC, which is this part right here, if that ever equals 0, then you do not have a multiplicative inverse. Okay, so if it does equal 0, then you would not have a multiplicative inverse. So, and one of the reasons is, think about it, if 1 over, and that were a 0 there, anything over 0 is considered undefined, so that would be a no-no. So let's look at problem 3. Sorry it took so long. Wanted to do a little bit of explanation before we actually do example 3. Now, if we're going to specifically find the inverse of this problem, again, think of this is A, this is B, this is C, and of course this is D. That's the way you have to think of it for the formula to work. Okay, so here's the formula again, as was given right above that we just talked about. So it's really a matter of plugging in and substituting the numbers in for the letters and going with it. 1 over AD, which is negative 1 times 4, minus BC, which is 3 times, negative 2 times 3. Okay, well, that becomes negative 4 minus a negative 6, which ends up being plus 6, which is why they get a 1/2 right here. All right. Then the matrix itself, notice that we're going to switch the A and the D part. So the 4 is going to go here, and the negative 1 is going to go here. And then we make these two right here opposites of what they were. So notice that became a positive 2, and that became a negative 3. All we have to do now that we've figured that out is simply to distribute this matrix, or this number outside of this matrix. We call that a scalar. We're going to multiply that by each term inside the matrix itself. So again, half of 4 is where we're going to get 2, half of 2 is where we get 1, half of negative 3 is where we get negative 3/2, and half of negative 1 is where we got negative 1/2. This right here becomes the inverse, the multiplicative inverse of the other matrix. And what that means is that when we multiply those two matrices together, that one plus its original, or times its original, what you would find is you would get the identity matrix, which is going to look like this. And when we do matrix multiplication or trying to solve equations using that, which we're going to in example 5, then we really need to know how to find the inverse of that. Okay, let's look at 3 before we finish. If I'm going to do that, it's going to be 1 over AD, which is 3 times 1, minus these two, which is negative 1 times negative 2, and that becomes 3 minus 2, which is 1, and 1 over 1 just means that the number out front is going to be 1. Okay? And then all I have left to do is to switch the 3 and the 1, so I do, switch those around, and I make the B and the C opposite of what they were. So negative 2 now becomes positive 2, negative 1 now becomes positive 1. And there's my multiplicative inverse on this particular problem. Hope this was helpful.